Joining me now here on the Knicks Film School pregame show with the Knicks wrapping up their Western Conference road trip with a battle in Los Angeles, their second battle in Los Angeles. They take on the team claims Crypto.com Arena home to the many people in Los Angeles. And that is, of course, the Los Angeles Lakers, the champions of the in-season tournament. And we'll find out just how much that matters to my guest today. Joining me from Lakers Nation and, of course, the front office show, Mr. Trevor Lane. Welcome back to the Knicks Film School Podcast, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me back on. Excited to break down this matchup. I think this is going to be a great one.
So let's start real quick with the in-season tournament, because I was asked a lot as a Knicks fan, because I don't know if you know this, but we don't have the prestigious history of championships and banners that the Lakers have. But I was asked, if the Knicks win, should they raise a banner, and do they have a parade? And I gave the answer of like, I'm in favor of it. I think if a different franchise wins it, it's a different conversation. But it did. I was 50-50. If they raise it, whatever. If they don't, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, they should have raised that banner. It appears that the Lakers are going to raise a banner for the in-season tournament championship that they just won. So I ask you, on behalf of Laker fans, do you think that they should be raising this banner, and how much does that championship mean to Laker fans?
Well, so I think that my sense is that the NBA probably has some influence here in terms of getting them to raise a banner. They would like them to do it. And so that's part of it. But I also think that they're correct that they should raise one. And I like that they're doing it here, because there's a lot of fans who say, no, it's a championship or nothing. Otherwise, it doesn't go up in the rafters here. You know, Western Conference championship trophies are being used as door stoppers in Lakers offices. That's a story that's been going around for a while. They only hang championship banners, but I like that what they're doing is they're differentiating it from a championship banner. It's going to be a different size, different shape, and it's just going to be one. So should the Lakers win future in-season tournaments, they will add the years to the banner that's being put up. So rather than have a new banner each year. So again, it's going to differentiate it. It's going to be something that's different. But I think that you got to look at this two ways. Number one, from the Lakers' perspective, from a general NBA team's perspective, is this something that should be hung up? Is this something that matters to them? I think it very clearly mattered to the team, mattered to the players. And while right now it might not be the most prestigious thing, I think that you might as well go ahead and hang up a banner there, especially if this is going to become a thing in the future, which, by the way, this can be a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy here. If the Lakers hang up a banner, doesn't that make it a little bit more important? If 10 years from now, we're talking about in-season tournament wins as meaning something, we're going to look back and be able to say, well, the Lakers won the first one, and that championship will hang in the rafters at Crypto.com Arena or whatever it's called by that point. Who knows? But I think it's important from that perspective. But then from the NBA's perspective, the NBA is very invested in making this happen, in making the in-season tournament a real thing and something that's going to bring eyeballs, bring viewers, bring excitement. And so far, mission accomplished. I thought they got great basketball. I thought we got playoff intensity basketball in November and in December. So I think it worked out better than we could have hoped the in-season tournament did. But if you want this to be a thing long-term, you need the Lakers to hang that banner. You need the Lakers to put that up there, because not only are you setting that precedent that this means something and you're not going to let teams kind of pretend that it doesn't, but also, what does this mean for future years? Let's say a team like, I don't know, let's say it's the Orlando Magic or the Charlotte Hornets or somebody like that wins it next year. If the precedent has been set that the Lakers didn't hang the banner, and then you go and you want to hang one up, well, you wind up feeling kind of bad about it. It looks bad because the prior team didn't do it, right? You want the Lakers to set the precedent that, hey, even the glamour franchises in the NBA are going to hang this banner, and it's going to mean something to them. So from the NBA, the league's perspective, the in-season tournament, the longevity of the tournament, it's important that they do put something up that acknowledge it. So I think it's the right move to hang a banner for it.
I think you're hitting on the biggest takeaway I had from a general NBA sense about the in-season tournament. And anytime I have a conversation about it and whether it matters, and this is really like with casual NBA fans that had no idea what this tournament was or how it worked, I just said, like, we're only going to take it as seriously as these players do. And when it was apparent, or not even just apparent, but evident, that the players took it seriously, that they cared about it, that they were trying to hit their point differentials to a certain level, even with opponents complaining about it, that this mattered. This absolutely mattered. Going to Vegas mattered. And like you said, if LeBron and the Lakers are going to take it as seriously as they did, and they're the first champion, it, like you said, it sets the precedent. The caveat I will add is that while I'm sure as the Lakers winning the championship was nice to see, not every team that made the tournament got a benefit of getting to enjoy the benefits of being in the in-season tournament. For example, the New York Knicks, their reward for making the tournament was an extra road game against Milwaukee and an extra road game against Boston. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at the Sixers schedule yesterday, and their punishment for missing the in-season tournament was that they get to play an extra home game against Washington and an extra home game against the free-falling Atlanta. So I think there's little things they can adjust to how the tournament works and how the schedule pans out. But the Knicks lose out. They're going to play 40 home games this year. So I guess we'll wrap up in-season tournament talk. But are there any adjustments you would make as far as the layout and the scheduling, or this being year one, it's tough to really make that type of judgment?
Yeah, I had that exact thought before the tournament started. I was looking at the way this could all play out, and I went, you could actually, in terms of regular season games, you could actually be benefited by winning your group, losing your first quarterfinal game, and then getting a couple of easier games added to your schedule against teams that also dropped out if you don't care at all about the tournament. It seems like kind of that's where the 76ers wound up. They actually wound up benefiting in the tournament by getting some games added in that weren't against top tier opponents. So yeah, that's part of the downside that maybe could use some tweaking. I'd like to see the point differential thing. I know there was some concerns about that. I don't particularly care too much about that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you don't want teams running the score up on you, then beat them, right? Play defense, play all the way throughout the game. It's something we see it in this is very much a soccer model in tournaments. You see teams play goal differential all the time in soccer. So I'm not too worried about that. The biggest thing is, can we change the floors? And it takes me half the game to get adjusted to the court. And maybe that's just me being old man, but this is when I see them, I get it. They want people to be flipping through the channels and stop and go, whoa, there's something different happening in the NBA tonight, and pay attention to it. I think you can accomplish that without just bashing people over the heads with this just jarring of a floor design. So I think they're too bright. They take away from the game itself. So I'd like to see the courts toned down a bit for next season. But as far as the tournament itself, the way that it's set up, yes, I would like to see a way for them to not reward teams for not performing well in the tournament or dropping out early in the tournament. That would be ideal. I don't know exactly how you tweak that. I'm sure smarter people than me can figure it out. For me, just from the viewership side, let's take it easy on the floors and not bash people over the heads with the fact that it's a tournament game.
I think you just mentioned why the courts are the way they are. It's not for us. It's not for the people that we're going to watch anyway. It's an eye-catching attraction for someone flipping through the channels, for whoever still has cable. And then there's kids that they're gonna remember what the courts looked like. I'm with you. Some of these courts are extreme. The Lakers purple court was, in my mind, somewhat extreme.
It's yellow. It's like it's not even a gold. It's a yellow.
So is it mostly gold and then the middle stripe was purple?
Yeah, it's
okay. It's the Heat court I'm thinking of. That was all red and then the middle court was black. Yeah, or the OKC court that was just very blue. Teal. Yeah. So it's year one. I agree from an entertainment perspective. I cared about December basketball in a way I would care about probably April basketball, maybe not June basketball, but I was invested in a Saturday night December basketball game in the NBA, which is something I can't necessarily say would happen in the past. The other element of the in-season tournament as we transition to the regular season is it seems to have added just a brutality to the schedule to start the year. We were talking a bit before we started recording that the Knicks are coming off a back-to-back where they were in Phoenix and then the Clippers last night. And unfortunately, the Clippers benefited from the Knicks playing the second night of a back-to-back in Crypto.com Arena. And so I was asking how brutal has the Lakers schedule been? And if you want to just tell Knicks fans, it's not just us. Everybody seems to be having a pretty brutal start to the season, and the Lakers players are complaining about it, right?
Yeah, we had after the last game, Max Christie, LeBron James were both talking about how difficult the schedule has been in the month of December and how it's just been a lot of travel that they've been dealing with. Here we've got Max Christie was saying we were in Vegas for 4 days, went back home for 1 day, flew right back out, go to Texas for 4 days. Then they come back. Then they're right back out on the road. They're going to Chicago, Minnesota on the second night of a back-to-back, then over to OKC. Then finally you're back home and you get the Celtics on Christmas Day. They've been bouncing all over the place. Part of this is the tournament because they went to Vegas, but it's just been a rough go. But here's the thing though, there's a lot of teams that will have different stretches of their schedule that are going to be difficult. But this is also part of what this is. It's the NBA's vision. It's that magic word, parity. What happens is there's less gimme games on anybody's schedule when you have more teams that are competing at a higher level, and you have teams that are getting better through different things that are happening in the CBA, through the play-in tournament. You've got less teams going into tank mode. So that's created less opportunities to second night of a back-to-back, but you've got a terrible team on your schedule. You can kind of breeze through that game and then move on to the next one. You don't have as many opportunities for that. Instead, random Wednesday night, you're still got a very difficult opponent. I think that's part of it here too, is there's just better teams in general, especially when we're looking at the Western Conference, because parity is becoming more and more of a thing. So that's part of it. But I also think, the tournament added to it a little bit. And, look, the NBA schedule, it's not easy, especially the second night of a back-to-back on the road situations. I hate those. I wish there was a way to eliminate those, because I think you get poor quality performances in that type of environment. But it is what it is, and teams are going to have to battle through it this year.
Well, the Knicks have been battling through it. And like you said, the Lakers have been battling through it. A lot of teams that I've spoken to throughout this show have just said the schedule's been brutal. Apparently for everybody except the Sixers, the schedule has just been brutal to start the year. It's still a 15-11 start for the Lakers, though, which, I mean, you add in the title or whatever you want to call the in-season tournament championship that they won. It's been somewhat of a success from my perspective outside looking in. How have Laker fans received the first 26 games of the season? How are the vibes in LA at the moment?
There's some issues because they're 15-11 and they're the 8th seed. Right. That's where people look at the standings and go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with the Lakers? They're terrible. Something needs to change. Fire everybody, trade everybody. Right. I'm exaggerating not always, but I'm exaggerating.
It's probably not too much of an exaggeration.
It's not much of an exaggeration, but the team has had stretches where they haven't looked great. They've been hammered with injuries all season long. In fact, there's been 6, 7, maybe 8 games, I think at this point, I've lost count, where they've had 7 or 8 players available, like true rotation players. They're not like two-way guys that you're putting in. That was the case in their last game, where they essentially had an 8-man rotation. So they've been crushed by injuries all season long. Gabe Vincent may be returning to play against the Knicks here. He has not. He played the first 4 games of the season. He played horribly. First 4 games of the season, was shooting 7% from 3, but he may be returning. I think this may be the first game of the season that the Lakers have had their entire team healthy. If everybody bounces back who was out the last game, that's D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Davis, Cam Reddish, who's been really good for the Lakers this season. He could be back. Jalen Hood-Schifino, I don't know his status. He's been dealing with back issues, but he's probably not part of the rotation anyway. So this game may be the actual first game all season that Darvin Ham has had a full complement of his rotation players to turn to. So they've been hit hard by injuries, but fans have been, yes, the in-season tournament win uplifted people, showed them that there is another level this team can get to, but they haven't exactly been playing inspired basketball the whole time. So given the injuries, I think you got to be pretty happy with 15-11. But if you're a fan that's just looking at the standings, you're probably thinking, what's wrong with the Lakers?
I think I speak on behalf of Knicks fans everywhere that, of course, the first time the Lakers are going to have their full complement of healthy players is going to be when they play the Knicks, because it just seems to happen to work out that way. But I guess we'll see how it works out in that matchup. You mentioned the I'll call it consternation from Lakers fans because of where they are in the standings and potentially some different things that could be happening with the team. What is the biggest complaint from Lakers fans so far this year, based off of what you're hearing?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is people are not happy with Darvin Ham with the head coach, which that kind of comes with the territory. That's the way it goes.
Yes.
Every team. I mean, aside from maybe Heat, I'm sure there's Heat fans that aren't happy with coaching decisions. Yeah.
When I did a Heat pregame pod and I was mentioning that they were complaining about Spo in the finals last year, and I was just like, every team hates their coach. That's just
that just comes with the territory. But other than that, a lot of it is the shooting. The Lakers have not been a good 3-point shooting team. They don't take a high volume of 3-point shots. That's holding back their offensive rating, their offensive efficiency. They're not doing much to crash the offensive boards. That's a tactical decision, though. They're sending players back to try to shore up their transition defense. But that's been an issue that they've been looking at. The other thing is the backup big position has been a struggle with Christian Wood and Jackson Hayes. Both of them haven't quite been what Lakers fans hoped they would be this season. And then when you look at what this team has provided in terms of just the overall offensive punch, there's been a clunkiness to their offensive game that is not, and part of that again, I think, is that players have been out. It's been tough for guys to get into a rhythm, but for a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they sure have struggled to score points, struggled to create any kind of exciting offensive production. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on too in this game. Can the Lakers get things going, particularly from behind the arc? Can that open some things up for them? Because it's kind of felt like the same old thing. Guys come to the Lakers, they forget how to shoot, and teams just pack the paint against them and dare anybody else to hit an outside shot and keep LeBron and AD as bottled up as they possibly can. So we'll see what happens there with that one. But those have been pretty much the main complaints for this Lakers team so far.
Yeah, we'll see how much this matchup creates an opportunity for the Lakers. Just like the Knicks, we're on, I think, game 6 of this. Just everybody's having their best night of the season shooting threes. And it started in the in-season tournament when they played Milwaukee, and the Bucks hit like 22 of 35 from 3. Then the Celtics, who are a 3-point machine, hit a ton of threes. And you wanted to write it off as like, what? Those are 2 elite teams in the East. That's not going to happen every night. And then Toronto, one of the worst half-court offenses in the sport, who's not a great 3-point shooting team, also shot well from 3. And then Utah did it, and then Phoenix did it, and then last night the Clippers, of course, did it. So I'm very curious how the Knicks fare against a team, again, like the Lakers, as you mentioned, that isn't a great 3-point shooting team. The Knicks play a lot of drop coverage, but a lot of that was usually part of the strategy when Mitchell Robinson was in the lineup, and he's obviously going to miss the next 8 to 10 weeks because of his ankle surgery. And they're just figuring out what to do right now, or still figuring out what to do on the defensive end. So for a Lakers team that struggles to score, the Knicks might be the elixir going into this matchup. You mentioned the AD and LeBron of it all, and I want to split the conversation about them into 2 parts, because I need to just ask your perspective about what we're seeing with LeBron James. When you were on with me last year, I asked about LeBron's relationship to Lakers fans and what I thought you gave the most insightful takeaway from it, or I guess way for me to think about it. It's just the biggest thing the biggest hurdle he has to clear is that he'll never be Kobe. And while that obviously still exists, I'm sure, what he's doing in year 21, 22, I think 21 or 22, 21 of his NBA career, where he's a legitimate first-team All-NBA MVP candidate. The lineup data says he's one of the more impactful players in the sport, let alone on the Lakers. I mean, what has it been like watching this happen? And is there any thought that like this is sustainable, that at almost 40 years old, this is going to keep happening, and where he's going to lead us to like a late playoff run once again?
Well, so I think the difference we've got with the LeBron that the Lakers have right now is that he can go in spurts. And I think that was part of what the optimism that the in tournament provided, was that LeBron can still turn it up because he took his game to another level. Suddenly, a LeBron that we've seen misses defensive rotations, misses box outs and things like that, suddenly was on point with all of those things. And he's fired up and all. He can't do that every night. But when he needs to, he can still get there. And that in and of itself is remarkable. On top of that, even when he's, you can, especially given how he played in the tournament, it's very obvious that he is to some degree holding back during most of these regular season games. And that's perfectly reasonable given the fact that he's literally the oldest player in the NBA. And it's easy to forget that. It's easy to lose sight of how unprecedented this is, what he's doing right now. We've had players that played in the NBA up to LeBron's age. We haven't had anybody that's produced quite like this. We even think about like Jordan's Wizards days, which statistically were not terrible, even though we may want to try to forget those years from our social consciousness or whatever. But LeBron, what he's doing right now, it's absolutely unreal. I think it's the culmination of all the work he's put in on his body over the years. And it's the kind of thing where, because it's LeBron, you just kind of feel like, well, he's not human. And so you can almost lose sight of the fact that what we're seeing on a night-to-night basis has really never happened before. We've never seen anybody at his age be able to do this. So it is unreal what we're seeing out of him night to night. I think it is sustainable considering that we've seen that he's got another level. Now, that's not to say that he's not going to have games that he misses where he needs to take nights off. He's not going to have, that's going to happen. I'm sure there'll be some bumps and bruises, some injuries and things like that that'll pop up as the season goes on. But the fact that he just showed at the in-season tournament that what he's doing right now is not 100%. This is not him going all out, very much so. That lets me know that, yeah, this probably is sustainable, because he's not really pushing down on the gas pedal right now when he's doing what he's doing on a regular season night. He's got another level he can get to. Hopefully we don't have to see it again until playoff time, though.
I mean this as respectfully as possible, but do you know how ridiculous that sounds? That he has another level to get to with how he's been so far this year. Like, let's ignore the cleaning the glass data, which shows that they're like 2 touchdowns better with him on the floor. If you go to his basketball reference page, this is his 4th best field goal percentage season, with just his last 2 Miami years and that one Cleveland year he was insane being better. This is his 2nd best 3-point percentage shooting season, behind the year he won MVP, that year the Heat won 27 straight games. And this is his most efficient season with effective field goal percentage. And he's taking more threes and being more efficient at it. The fact that, like you said, this is just something we've never seen before. And like the only comp that I've even kind of come up with when trying to talk about this with other people is like, what if Brady, I don't even think Brady, you could even compare it, because Brady was doing it in a system. There were other players involved, but like that's the comp, is like, what if he was still this elite at that age? And it's the closest thing I have to it. I will say the thing that's thrown me off a little bit is when I've watched the Lakers this year, I also noticed AD's impact, specifically on the defensive end. And we just did on Patreon our all defense teams, our all NBA teams for the year. And I had AD as a lock on my second team. And then you look at some of the lineup data and it's like, well, it's LeBron is the very clear MVP, all NBA candidate, and then AD is a tertiary player, and that's what that would preach. And I want to ask someone that's seen every Laker minute this season, what am I missing, or what is the lineup data missing as far as AD's impact, or is it clear that it's LeBron and then AD and then everybody else, or are they on the same level to an extent?
Well, it depends on which end of the floor that you're looking at, really, because on offense, it's LeBron and then it's AD. We've seen games where AD can get schemed out. Teams send a double at him. He'll try to pass out of that. Sometimes he's successful with that, sometimes not. But he'll have games where he puts up 13 points or something like that. Or, he also has games like he did in the in-season tournament final where he goes for 40. It depends on, who he's going up against, what the matchup is, and he tries to make the right play on the offensive end. Sometimes the Lakers fans will bemoan that. They want to see him be just more aggressive and, 20 plus points every single night. But offensively, Anthony Davis isn't always the most consistent player out there. Defensively, he's really good. Defensively, it's AD and then everybody else. And it's super noticeable when Anthony Davis is not out on the floor. When he's not out there, the Lakers tend to fall to pieces defensively. Again, we just saw it against the Spurs. When they didn't have Anthony Davis, it was Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood in the middle. And yikes, was that a disaster. It did not work out at all. So the Lakers defense is so driven by Anthony Davis and what he does out there on the floor that I think we would need a larger sample size of games without AD to truly see how much things drop off without him, and to get a sense of, okay, if you had the other team's best and you don't have Anthony Davis in the game, what does that ultimately do? What happens with the Lakers defensive rating? So that's something that you'd really have to keep an eye on there. Again, it's almost reframing things. And this is the frustration I've seen from fans who've said, well, Anthony Davis is not truly a 1A star, because we think of a 1A star as a guy who's going to go 1-on-5 and hit big shots in the clutch, and nobody can stop him. They're going to hit these sidestep fadeaway threes and just dominate on offense. And that's not what really makes Anthony Davis special. That's not really his game. He can have big offensive games for sure. But what really sets him apart is his defensive capability, his flexibility on that end of the floor, his ability to wall off entire areas of the floor, his ability to defend on the perimeter, to rebound the basketball, to protect the rim, to do all of these things at once. It's that makes him a superstar, but that's not typically what we think of when we think of a superstar player. So all of that kind of gets wrapped into this conversation of what is Anthony Davis? How good is he really? Is he truly that next tier player? What really is his superpower? It's the defensive side of the ball. And that's just not what we tend to think of in terms of a superstar level player. So that makes things tough too. But again, I think in terms of the numbers, I think if we saw more games without Anthony Davis, which hopefully we don't, it would become apparent like how big of a factor he is for this Lakers defense.
That's the other thing that stood out when looking at the Lakers is how healthy they've been this year. And I know that's been, well, okay, I say that with a grain of salt. To their two best players, LeBron and AD, how healthy they've been this year, because that's always been a concern, at least since the two paired up a couple years ago. Making it to the conference finals last year mattered a lot, at least to me. I know that they were a 7 seed, but I even looked at the stretch that they went on after the Russ trade and the evolution of the promotion and evolution of Austin Reeves, and that leading to a much better fit amongst the team. If you want to speak on behalf of Lakers fans or even just yourself, like looking at the layout of the Western Conference, what's your confidence level of the Lakers being able to make a deep playoff run as is? And I guess a follow-up question would be, if you're not as confident, what's the move? Or do you have a move in mind that you want to see them make?
Yeah, I think that the in-season tournament gave you more confidence that they can make a deep run because they did take it to another level, because we saw when they care, when they truly want to push down on the gas pedal, when LeBron and AD are fired up, they get to that next level and they can be a really difficult team to deal with. You know, LeBron just talked about this, that when they have their guys, they can be one of the best teams in the NBA. As you said, LeBron and AD have largely been healthy. They've missed a few games, but they've largely been healthy for the season, which obviously that's the most important thing. But most of their supporting cast has been injured for most of the season. They've been playing down players most of the way, and this team was really built around depth. They were built around having a number of guys who are making that kind of mid-level exception money and above, and they've been without a lot of those. And Rui Hachimura has been in and out of the lineup with a broken nose, with a concussion. You've had Jared Vanderbilt miss the bulk of the season dealing with a heel issue. On and on and on. It's been one injury after another for this team. So the hope is that as they get healthy, hopefully LeBron and AD become healthy or stay healthy, and that will allow them to come postseason, really take their game to that next level, having built on the chemistry that frankly they haven't really been able to forge up to this point due to so much shuffling with players in and out of the lineup. As far as what they could need, I do think there are holes in this team that they're going to look to fill around the trade deadline. I think that they could use a true physical backup big. You don't really have anybody aside from Anthony Davis. Christian Wood has his pluses and minuses, hasn't shot the ball well this year. I think that will ultimately come around. Jackson Hayes can't stay on the floor. He's just been a foul machine, and he's not that big of a player to begin with. I think they need a big physical presence in the paint. That's something that they've lacked this year. They could certainly use more three-point shooting. Three-point shooting tends to, as we've talked about, fall to pieces when guys come to the Lakers. And then I think they could use a point of attack defender at the guard position. We've talked about Alex Caruso, but frankly, 29 teams are talking about Alex Caruso right now, and if he could be a fit for them. So I think they could use those three things specifically: three-point shooting, a little bit more perimeter defense at the guard position, and then a true big. I don't think they get all of those things at the trade deadline, but I think now is the time where the Lakers and all teams around the NBA are evaluating what is it exactly that we need. And then come mid-January, I think those talks will start to get a bit more serious as we get closer to that February 8th trade deadline.
Well, one question I do need to ask about the guys that the Lakers do have and guys that seem to be mainstays in the rotation at the moment, the evolution of Cam Reddish, or the performance of Cam Reddish, former Knick. There is a hive that exists amongst Knicks fans that he's the one that got away, that hate the Josh Hart trade that was made last year, even though the Knicks went to a new level after trading a guy that wasn't playing for Josh Hart. What's been your your biggest reason that you could say for what has made Cam such an impactful player? We, on our side, have seen a guy that's much more tuned in on defense, that's hitting his threes when given the opportunity. And more importantly, he doesn't feel the necessity to really show out on offense because he's playing off of LeBron and AD and players that are clearly better. So from your perspective, how would you evaluate what's made Cam Reddish such an important player to the Lakers?
It's really been defense, and that's been a big surprise. The sense of Cam Reddish coming in was that, okay, this is a guy who can be a bit of a slasher, who can knife to the basket, hasn't shot well enough over the course of his career, still shooting just 33% from three this season. But this is a guy who's going to bring you a little bit on the offensive end, but defensively may get burned a bit. Instead, he's really committed himself to defense. He's got a big frame. He's 6'8", long wingspan, and he's got the quickness to defend on the perimeter, to occasionally check guards, which has made him in some ways kind of Jared Vanderbilt-esque for the Lakers, just in terms of being a bigger player, but can still defend players who are quick. So that's been something that's really worked out well for them, for their defense. He's been great getting deflections. He's averaging 1.4 steals per game right now. And it's a noticeable difference when he's not in the lineup, when he's been out hurt. And that is certainly not what we were projecting coming in. I thought he was probably going to be the odd man out in the wing rotation. Instead, it seems like he's locked down that starting two-guard job simply because he's been so good defensively, and that pairs well with either D'Angelo Russell or Austin Reeves, whoever's in the game at the time, because it mitigates some of their own issues at that position on defense. So it's been the commitment to defense that has really set Cam apart this season. It's been great to see. I think there's a little bit of this. It's almost a little Dwight Howard-esque from the Lakers back in the 2019-2020 season, where the sense was, if this doesn't work out, then what? I don't know what happens with Cam Reddish if things didn't work out. So in some ways, his back was kind of against the wall here. Now, much younger, obviously, than when Dwight Howard came to the Lakers, but still, he didn't hit in a number of stops, and you had to wonder what would happen if things weren't working out here. So you're happy for him to see that he's finally getting things to click. Hopefully this is something that continues, but it's been the commitment to the defensive side of the ball that has really set him apart and allowed him to claim the minutes that he has on this team.
Yeah, Jonathan Macri, who hosts our main show normally, he mentioned the commitment to defense that's similar to Dennis Smith Jr. in how he had 1 foot out the league, and then he committed himself to defense and has now found himself on a second location after what he did in Charlotte, and now he's obviously in Brooklyn, and that's turned him into a mainstay in the NBA. And Cam, like you said, with his back against the wall, potentially really one of his last shots, committing himself to defense, you have to commend him for it. And, he's obviously played really well for the Lakers and provided some very meaningful minutes in the first part of this season. 2 questions before I let you get out of here. The first one is a bit of a fun one. I do this thing with every person that joins me, and it's a Mount Rushmore of rivals. So what I mean by that, calendar comes out every year. There's the dates you circle that you look forward to, the opponents that you're looking forward to. So if you had to tell me your personal 4 Lakers rivals, I think I know one already, that you circle the calendar for when they come into town or when the Lakers go to their town, who would they be?
Well, for me, it's a Mount Rushmore of one, and I'm old school, but it's the Celtics. It's Lakers Celtics. Okay. That's always the matchup that you want to look for. There are Lakers fans though who will tell you now, and even I put the vote out on Twitter, which trends younger. If I put the vote out on Twitter, I think the Clippers would get the most votes in terms of who Lakers fans are annoyed by the most, or want to beat the most, or consider to be this rival or whatever. So I think the Celtics and the Clippers are certainly up there. As far as the next 2 after that, the Denver Nuggets, based on what happened last year in the playoffs, that's certainly something that would come up this year. Not obviously a historic rivalry, but definitely something that is more on fans' minds. And then the 4th team, I mean, you could throw a number of teams out there, but I know Lakers fans have been kind of annoyed with the Suns of late, so maybe the Phoenix Suns would be in the mix there. And again, that would be one, and frankly, probably 2 spots that would shuffle a lot. You go back 20 years and it's and the Sacramento Kings are up there. There have been other teams that have come and gone. The Blazers would have been back there up there in the early 2000s. So you never know season to season what's going to kind of emerge. I think the mainstays right now are the Clippers and the Celtics. The other 2 spots will shuffle through this season. It's probably the Nuggets and the Suns.
Am I Am I wrong in assuming that the only Warriors case is that it's a LeBron generated attention, that basically because of LeBron's rivalry with the Warriors and the fact that they played each other both in that play-in game and last year in the playoffs, there's LeBron fans that look forward to any time the Lakers play the Warriors, but not the majority of Laker fans.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think the Warriors would be the next team on the list, and you could argue they should bump the Suns for sure. That could be something that's that you could get into, but the Warriors, it's a LeBron fan versus Curry fan thing that you see quite a bit, and people want to make the argument, Steph's better, LeBron's better, or whatever. It's to me though, like when the Warriors were at their best, the Lakers were not. And then when the Lakers were good in 2020, the Warriors were not. Last year was the first year that we really saw both sides kind of going at each other and both sides playing solid basketball. And obviously the Lakers came out on top in the second round of the playoffs. There was the play-in game a couple of seasons ago as well. But other than that, the two teams weren't really good at the same time. And so they kind of missed each other in that sense. And that, I think, robbed us of what could have been a really big rivalry building. But if you want to say the Warriors really should be the fourth team and not the Suns, I wouldn't fault you for it. I think they definitely could be. And particularly the fan bases probably irritate each other more than even like Suns fans and Lakers fans do. But just based on the clubs, it seems like they really, they get up to play both teams. But I think this is going to be, with the Warriors, it'll be an interesting battle when the Lakers do meet up with them, and there's going to be a little bit more to it. But I wouldn't go as far as to say like it's a big rivalry unless you're a LeBron fan, unless you're a Curry fan. That's where it's really the rivalry.
Yeah, I guess we'll see if the Warriors turn things around and make it so these teams even have a chance of meeting when they're both good again in the future. Last question before I get out of here. I know we've gone a little bit long on time, but your thoughts on the Knicks. I like to give my guest the floor, whether you want to ask a question about the Knicks this season or you just have some thoughts about the upcoming opponent. What are your thoughts on the Knicks as where things currently stand for them this year?
Well, I'll tell you first and foremost, I'm happy to see Julius Randle has been having his success over the last stretch of games here because, I saw a lot of fans were not thrilled with him. A lot of Knicks fans are not happy with talking trades with Julius Randle and all sorts of stuff. I've been a member of Randall Island, a resident of Randall Island for a long time since he was a Laker. I think he can be a tremendous player in this league. So happy to see him finding some success there. Losing Mitchell Robinson is absolutely devastating. I think the Lakers are a team that you can punish on the offensive glass. They don't do a great job cleaning things up there. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA in terms of giving up second chance scoring opportunities. So maybe fortuitous for the Lakers side that Mitchell Robinson's not there because he's a tremendous offensive rebounder. Jalen Brunson has been fantastic. Obviously dropped 50 the other night. He's been great as well. This Knicks team, they're right there in the mix, but I'll tell you what I'm really keeping an eye on with them. It's as we get close to that February 8th trade deadline, because every player that pops up, whether it's Zach LaVine or somebody else, I think the Knicks have the ammunition to potentially go after somebody and add them to this roster and take them to the next level. I think right now you can look at them and say, well, they're in that kind of second tier in the East. They're not on the same level as, say, the Bucks or the Celtics or one of those teams, but I think they've got the ammunition to go get somebody and really push them up. And right now it's just about kind of developing that chemistry, making sure you're at where you need to be, and then see if you can pour gasoline on the fire at the trade deadline. I think it's going to be an exciting trade deadline. I don't know exactly who's going to be out there on the market just yet. I think that's going to become apparent over the next month or so. But I'm keeping all eyes on the Knicks as a team that could certainly make a big move and propel themselves up in the conference.
How populated is Randall Island with Lakers fans? How many Laker fans are still paying rent on that?
It's not island? Super, but we've got plenty of room to spread out. There's I've got beachfront property there, and I can tell you I don't see a lot of neighbors around me, which is nice. It's very peaceful, very quiet. But no, there are Lakers fans that still fondly remember Julius Randle from his time in LA. Obviously the exit didn't go exactly the way, Lakers fans would have hoped. But I think in general, there's a positive vibe around Randle and his time with the Lakers.
Well, so first of all, I say that because, I end up being a Randle defender because he's just climbing up so many Knicks all-time leaderboards with what he's been over the past couple of years. But like I don't know if I also have an apartment somewhere on Randall Island, but I don't know how many orange and blue houses are on Randall Island. And I guess my very last question before I let you go is, as I mentioned, there's a contingent of Knicks fans that they miss Cam Reddish, think it would have happened here if they had given him a fair shot. There's the Knicks fans that watch Obi Toppin and what he's doing in Indiana and have the same evaluation. I believe there's going to be Knicks fans when Emmanuel quickly potentially leaves in restricted free agency or in a trade, that if he has a career that's better or more impactful than the limited role he's playing now, also takes a step. Are there Laker fans, or maybe more specifically, were there Laker fans that first year Randle really ascended that were like, that could have happened here? Like, you let him walk for literally nothing. That could have happened here. Like, what is the perspective of watching what Randle's become now?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it was, I remember back when it happened being just absolutely shocked. In fact, I was live on the radio when it was announced that the Lakers were just releasing Randle. And it felt like every free agent the Lakers had wanted for so long was a restricted free agent. And there was nothing they could do. They couldn't go get these guys that are restricted. Finally, the Lakers had a guy that was restricted, and they went, oh, you don't want to be a restricted free agent? Oh, cool. Go ahead. Go be unrestricted. Go sign with the Pelicans. No big deal. We won't worry about it. It was mind-blowing stuff that was the decision that the Lakers made. Now, ultimately, it led them to getting Rajon Rondo, and that worked out. He turned into playoff Rondo in the playoffs a couple years later, and everything went fine. But yeah, I mean, there's still Lakers fans who look at the way things ended with Julius Randle. You took a 7th overall draft pick and kind of let him slip away. Now, I think there's a realization that ultimately, even if the Lakers didn't go and eventually trade for Anthony Davis, you had Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, Josh Hart, Kyle Kuzma, if Lonzo Ball, gosh, I hope he heals up and gets healthy. But even if he was healthy, you weren't going to be able to pay all of these guys. You look at the salaries they're getting now, they weren't going to be able to keep everybody, but there's still frustration over the way things went with Randle and just not even getting anything from him on the trade market, just, giving in to his request to not be a restricted free agent so he could go sign somewhere else. It was surprising. It was shocking. And I think it was still a mistake that the Lakers made there. And that said, on a personal level, I'm happy to see him thriving somewhere else. So it's bittersweet, certainly, whenever the Lakers play Julius Randle.
It sounds like there was a case of too many guys with the Lakers. Like, you mentioned Josh Hart. I completely forgot that, specifically the Summer League version of Josh Hart, but then the version of Josh Hart when he was on the Lakers. And you mentioned Kuzma, and then obviously Caruso and all these different guys that they were eventually going to have to pay and eventually going to have to be part of a rotation. And the Knicks, obviously not to the same extreme, because the Knicks don't have a LeBron or an AD, but they're not going to be able to pay everybody, and they're not going to be able to keep everybody. And there's been a sense in some of the reporting around the Knicks that the front office recognizes they may have a problem with too many guys for a certain amount of minutes. So I'm curious to see if the Knicks explore at least go through the process and explore the trade market, so that way they don't make a similar mistake with what the Lakers did with Julius Randle. And we'll see if that mistake adds a little bit of motivation for Randle coming into this matchup on Monday against the Lakers. Trevor, thank you as always for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. Before you get out of here, would you like to plug for all the Knicks Film School audience?
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you want to find out more about the Lakers, we do have the Lakers Nation YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lakers Nation, where we break down all the latest happenings in the Lakers world every single day. You can check us out there. You also find us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, 5 days a week minimum. We have a new show going out over on the Lakers Nation podcast feed. And then all of our written work is over at LakersNation.com. If anybody wants to find me personally, you can find me at Trevor_Lane over on X, at Trevor Lane NBA on Instagram and Threads.
Thank you, Trevor.
No problem. Thank you again for having me.